Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. As I record this episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nominee of Donald Trump to head Health and Human Services, is on Capitol Hill. This is his opportunity to make clear to members of the United States Senate his views on vaccines, conspiracy theories, and so much more. I want to begin with something that hit me on Friday after I'd done the recording. And it gave me a weekend to really think about it, and that is the polio vaccine. I'm old enough to remember when life existed before the polio vaccine. Indeed, our next-door neighbor, the mother of the children, had polio. And indeed, her son, my good friend, had the effects of polio in his arms. We used to go out and play catch, and well, it was tough for Alfred, but we did it, and he appreciated it. The reason I'm raising this is because everything changed because of a scientist named Jonas Salk. The Salk vaccine revolutionized the world. It allowed all of us to proceed, realizing that the odds of our getting polio were virtually nil because of science. What bothered me this last week was a key aide to Robert Kennedy Jr., who, it turns out, tried to have the permission to use the polio vaccine revoked. That is to say, for some reason, we shouldn't have the polio vaccine anymore. I want to say a word about the Rotary clubs. I have the privilege of speaking to Rotary in a variety of venues over the years, and one of the things Rotary did was to adopt a program to do away with polio completely. And the last time I spoke there, and of course, Rotary doesn't pay an honorarium, but they do try to do something nice for the guest speaker, and they contributed money on my behalf in honor of my speaking to help do away with polio. In other words, making the vaccine even more available. One of my favorite stage shows, I saw it in 1959 in New York, starring Ralph Bellamy and Greer Garson, was a marvelous production called Sunrise at Campobello. It was all about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his ability to overcome polio. The stage show and the film only cover the period 1921 when Roosevelt was stricken until 1924 when he speaks to the Democratic National Convention, and what is really a miraculous triumph of the will over polio. Now, Franklin Roosevelt's story was an important one, and it created an organization called the March of Dimes. I remember as a kid contributing dimes to the March of Dimes in order to find a cure for polio. And so when Jonas Salk came up with that cure, it was amazing. And the movie and the production on the stage that I saw of Sunrise at Campobello inspired me, as did a book that I read called Roosevelt and the Warm Springs Story by Turnley Walker. Walker was affected by polio, by infantile paralysis. And like so many people who followed Franklin Roosevelt's lead, he went to Warm Springs, Georgia. Now, the waters of Warm Springs were warm, and for polio victims, it gave them a chance to exercise in water. And not everyone's ability to walk was restored. Certainly, Franklin Roosevelt was never able to walk on his own. But it was an inspiring place. And when you read Roosevelt and the Warm Springs Story, you are inspired all over again. When you see Sunrise at Campobello, you're inspired all over again. Well, there is a member of the United States Senate, the outgoing Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, who had polio when he was a boy. and who understands clearly the impact of the vaccine and how it changed millions and millions and millions of lives. When Bobby Kennedy Jr. testifies today or meets with members of the Senate, one of the questions he is going to be asked is whether or not he favors the polio vaccine. One of his key aides, as I mentioned earlier, was interested in the okay by the FDA for the polio vaccine being revoked. There is a serious question of science here. And I want to suggest to you in the strongest possible terms that the last person who should be put in charge of Health and Human Services is someone who has been a vaccine denier. Someone who has said that he believes that autism is caused by the vaccines administered to children when they are small, something which has been disproven by science. I'm very concerned because the future of our science, our ability to use a vaccine, is being threatened. And the fascinating thing is that Donald Trump seems to be buying into it. That's right. And how will the Senate respond? It is clear that Donald Trump wants Robert F. Kennedy Jr. confirmed. It is clear that members of the Senate are going to have serious questions. And it is even clearer that if Bobby Kennedy Jr. is put in charge of Health and Human Services, well, there's going to be a problem. Whether it has to do with COVID shots, whether it has to do with a polio vaccine. Oh, speaking of COVID, I went in and had my shot the other day. I needed to get a new one. The question is, did I have any second thoughts? The answer is no. Because when COVID was at its height and we were on KGO radio almost every night, the question arose about how do we prevent death? It was interesting. It's a matter of emphasis. There were those who said, well, if you get the shot, you won't get COVID. And of course, that was never true. All that vaccine has done is to reduce the number of deaths and reduce the danger of COVID. But the polio vaccine really eliminated polio. So I'm going to watch what happens on Capitol Hill today. I'm going to watch with great care. I want to know what Mitch McConnell will say. Frankly, I want to know what the members of the Senate will say. Are we a nation that believes in science, or are we a nation that believes in conspiracy theories? It may all come down to that. And we'll know, and we'll talk about it right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. Thanks for tuning into another episode. No place I'd rather be than talking with you about these vital issues. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. You can interact with me on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and I welcome your conversation with me. And of course, my special appreciation to the wonderful producer of this podcast, Gogo Zoker. And to all of you, this is John Rothman. You are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman, and I'll be back tomorrow.